Well, look what the cat dragged in. The help. The voice dripped with mockery, thick with contempt. What's your move, mop boy? Gonna clean up the crime scene? The man took a step forward, gun hanging loose in one hand, menace coiling in his smile. Tell you what you leave now, and maybe we don't bury you in the garden, or stay and play hero. Either way, you'll die the janitor. Victor Brown didn't move, didn't blink. The words hit him like they always had, sharp, ugly, meant to slice through skin and dignity. But after 35 years of wearing the wrong color in the wrong rooms, he'd grown used to those blades. Tonight, though, wasn't about pride. It was about instinct. About the woman tied to a chair behind that door, whose wide, terrified eyes had just begged him for help. 2 minutes earlier, the hallways of the Holloway estate had been silent, just the soft purr of the floor polisher and the slow rhythm of Victor's breath. It was past 2 a.m., and the third floor gleamed under his care. Victor had worked here 3 years now, graveyard shift, 6 nights a week. He liked the quiet. It let him think, or forget. He pushed his cart past the guest wing, humming under his breath something soulful and half-remembered. Then the silence cracked. A pop, like glass breaking. Then something dull, a thud, and then nothing. Victor froze. His old instincts, those from a life he no longer spoke of, flared. Back then, he'd carried a badge and a breathing mask, pulled screaming children from flame-filled bedrooms. But that was before the knee injury. Before the station chief lost his promotion recommendation. Before he realized the fire wasn't the only thing trying to burn him. He moved toward the sound, boots soft on carpet, the camera above the west wing dead. The blinking red light was gone. That wasn't possible. Not in this house. The Holloway estate was supposed to be Fort Knox with chandeliers. He reached the end of the hallway, where the master suite door stood open by an inch. He peered in, and the image slammed into him. Rose Holloway, the untouchable tech queen of Virginia, bound to a chair, face bruised, mouth taped, her eyes locked on his. She tried to scream through the tape, and that's when the man spoke. The voice from behind, the gun pressing cold against his back. Well, look what the cat dragged in. Now, face to face, Victor studied the man, white, lean, expensive leather gloves. Not shaking, professional, or close to it. Victor kept his hands at his sides. You don't want to do this, he said quietly. The man scoffed. You think I'm scared of a janitor? You should be thanking me. If you'd stayed in your basement, you'd be breathing tomorrow. Victor's jaw clenched. She doesn't deserve this. No one deserves anything, mop boy. Now move, or I swear. The man didn't get to finish. Victor's hand shot to the mop handle leaning against the wall. In one motion, he spun and slammed the heavy wooden shaft into the man's wrist. The gun flew. The man cursed. Victor lunged, but the man caught him by the collar and slammed him against the hallway wall. Pain burst through Victor's ribs, but he didn't let go. He elbowed the man hard, twisting out of the grip, and went for the gun. Fingers brushed metal. Then the man tackled him from behind. They crashed to the floor, fists, grunts. Victor's head hit marble. Stars exploded behind his eyes. The man cursed again and scrambled up, staggering toward the master bedroom. The door slammed. Locked. Victor lay there for seconds or minutes. Blood trickled from his temple. His vision pulsed. But inside that room, Rose was still tied. Still alone. He rolled to his side, coughing. Pulled himself to his knees. From the cleaning cart, he slid out the old fire axe he'd stashed months ago, just in case. Management would have fired him if they knew. But Victor never stopped preparing for emergencies. He rose on shaky legs, limped to the locked door, heard voices on the other side. We wait until she talks, said one man. She won't, said another harsher, familiar. Victor's blood chilled. That voice, it was Alex, Rose's brother, CTO of her company. The one who smiled for the cameras but always looked through Victor like he wasn't there. Inside, Rose spat, "You'll never get the codes." Alex replied, calm as winter, "Oh, we will. Just a matter of how broken you want to be first." Victor gripped the axe tighter. The man had said he'd die a janitor. Maybe, but he'd be standing, swinging, and someone would remember his name. If Victor's story moved you, hit the like button and drop a comment below. What do you think will happen next when justice stands with the overlooked? Victor's knuckles turned white around the axe handle as he stared at the locked door. The sounds behind it didn't match the serenity of the mansion's golden chandelier light. Behind that wood were monsters in tailored suits, men who hid knives behind boardroom smiles, and a woman who'd spent her life believing money could protect her. Now, none of it mattered. Victor didn't knock. He raised the axe, planted his feet, and swung. The first strike splintered the doorframe. The second cracked the lock. The third blew it wide open. The room inside looked like a war zone in waiting. Rose sat, slumped forward, arms still bound, blood smeared at her lip. One man, the tall one from the hallway. Rex spun to face Victor, eyes wide. Beside him stood Alex Holloway, Rose's younger brother, dressed like he was still at a shareholders' meeting. His blazer was buttoned, his tie perfect. The only thing off was the glint in his eyes, calculated, cold, and fully unbothered by the carnage around him. "Well," Alex said, "this is a surprise." Victor didn't answer. He didn't need to. He lunged at Rex, swinging the axe handle like a bat. Rex dodged barely and slammed his shoulder into Victor, sending him into the side wall. The axe clattered to the floor. Victor stumbled but didn't fall. The momentary shock passed. He charged again, fists clenched. They grappled, tangled, knocked over a lamp and sent it crashing. Sparks shot from the socket. The room flickered in bursts of light and shadow. Alex stepped backward toward Rose, pulled a small pistol from his jacket, and aimed it at her head. "Stop!" he barked. Both men froze. Victor's chest heaved. Blood dripped from his temple again. "You're not walking out of here," Victor said. "You think she's the threat," Alex said calmly, "but it's you, the janitor with a hero complex, always the most dangerous. You tied up your own sister," Victor growled. "For what? Money you already have?" Alex didn't blink. "Not money. Control. I built half that AI system. She just inherited the other half. She's weak, sentimental. She'd give it away for some justice initiative or social tech reform. You really want people like you deciding security systems, access codes, infrastructure?" he sneered. "There's a hierarchy for a reason." Victor's hands clenched tighter. He didn't move yet, but every muscle in his body was poised. Rex stepped forward again, pulling a knife from his boot. "Enough talking," he said. "Let's finish it. Victor, let him come." At the last second, he ducked under the knife swing, slammed a shoulder into Rex's chest, and grabbed the man's arm mid-strike. The knife scraped across Victor's forearm, drawing blood, but he twisted the limb, heard the pop of a dislocated joint, and wrenched the blade free. He shoved Rex backward, straight into the nightstand. The man collapsed, moaning. Alex's eyes darted. For the first time, he looked unsure. Then furious. He aimed the pistol at Victor's chest. "You should have stayed invisible," he said. Rose, still bound but alert, jerked her head sideways, knocking over a heavy lamp base at Alex's feet. The distraction gave Victor the second he needed. He flung the knife. It struck Alex's arm, not deep, but enough to make him howl and drop the gun. Victor was on him in seconds, slamming him down with every ounce of fury he'd held inside for years, for every job he'd lost, every name he'd been called, every moment he'd been overlooked. The gun slid across the floor, stopping near Rose's feet. With effort, she lifted her heel and nudged it toward Victor. He picked it up, pointed it at Alex. For a moment, silence. Only their breathing filled the room. "Shoot him," Rex groaned from the floor. "He's a nobody." "Is that what you see?" Victor asked, voice low. "A janitor with a gun." "Exactly," Alex spat. "You'll never be more than that." Victor walked slowly toward him, pressed the barrel to his temple. "Maybe, but tonight, I'm the one still standing." He didn't pull the trigger. Instead, he lowered the gun, walked to Rose, and cut her loose. She stood shakily, brushing hair from her eyes. You came back," she whispered. "You shouldn't have. You shouldn't have been alone," Victor said. For the first time, she looked at him not as background, not as help, but as a man. "Victor," she said. It was the first time she'd used his name. Downstairs, sirens howled in the distance. Victor turned to Alex, now crawling toward the hallway. He stepped forward, kicked the pistol away from him. "It's over," Victor said. "No," Alex hissed. "It's just beginning. You think they'll believe you? You think anyone's going to care what a janitor says happened here?" Rose stepped beside Victor. "They'll believe me." Alex's face twisted, but he stopped crawling. Police lights bathed the windows in red and blue. Victor's knees buckled slightly. He was still bleeding. He felt cold creeping in, but he didn't let go of the weapon until uniformed officers burst into the room. He raised both hands, dropped the gun, and said clearly, "She's the victim. They tried to kill her. Check the cameras." The first officer cuffed Alex. Another secured Rex. Paramedics pushed into the room, guiding Rose toward the stairs. One turned to Victor, asking his name. "Victor Brown," he said. "Maintenance." The EMT looked surprised. "You took down both of them?" Victor nodded. "They were just men. I fought worse." Rose, wrapped in a blanket, turned back before descending. "He's not just maintenance," she said softly. "He's the reason I'm alive." Victor didn't say anything else. He watched them disappear down the hall. His hands still shook, but not from fear, from release, from the weight finally lifting. As the house emptied of sirens and strangers, Victor sat on the stairwell landing, alone once more. The adrenaline faded, the pain set in, and in the quiet, he finally allowed himself a breath. For the first time in a long time, someone had seen him, not for what he did, but for who he was. The hospital room was quiet except for the occasional beep from the heart monitor. Victor sat upright in the narrow bed, his arm bandaged, a dull ache settling into his ribs with every breath. Outside the window, the early morning sun crawled across the skyline, painting the Richmond rooftops gold. For a man who had spent most of his life in shadows, basements, boiler rooms, service corridors, this light felt unfamiliar. A nurse had brought him coffee an hour ago. He hadn't touched it. The knock at the door was soft but firm. He knew who it was before she stepped in. Rose Holloway entered, wearing no makeup, her usual armor of heels and power suits replaced with sneakers and a long gray coat. Her hair was pulled back into a messy bun, strands escaping down her cheek. "You're hard to find," she said. Victor looked at her evenly. "Didn't think anyone would come looking." "I owed you that much." She moved to the chair beside his bed but didn't sit. For a moment, she stared at him, really stared. Then she exhaled. "They've taken Alex into custody. Federal. Turns out he was already under investigation. What happened at the house just lit the fuse." Victor didn't respond. She waited, then added, "They're pressing charges. Attempted murder. Corporate sabotage. Conspiracy." Victor raised an eyebrow. "Family business." Rose let out a short, bitter laugh. "Yeah, some legacy." Silence again. She finally sat down. Her voice softened. "You saved my life." "I reacted," he said. "Instinct. Number." She leaned forward. "You chose to walk through that door. You didn't have to." Victor looked down at his hands. The knuckles were bruised. The dried blood had been cleaned, but the memory lingered. "You said it yourself," he murmured. "People like me don't get seen. That's going to change." He looked up at her then. "How?" "I've been thinking," she said, folding her hands. "There's a foundation I've been quietly funding rehabilitation for former service workers, veterans, people who got pushed out of the system. I want you to help me run it, or at least consult." Victor's expression didn't change. "I'm not looking for a promotion. It's not that." She hesitated. "Look, the truth is, I don't know if I ever saw the people in my own house. You were a shadow, efficient, invisible. But when everything fell apart, it was you who stood up." She paused. "And that makes me question every decision I've made up to now." Victor sat in silence for a long beat. Finally, he said, "You were raised to believe people like me were part of the furniture, not the fire brigade." Her eyes softened. "Yes, but you're trying to unlearn it." "I'm trying," he nodded slowly. "Then start by walking out of here and not making a press release." She blinked. "What?" "No cameras, no speeches. No headlines about the brave janitor who saved the CEO. That's not justice. That's a rerun." Rose sat back, folding her arms. "So what do you want?" Victor looked out the window again. "Help the next man who shows up with grease on his collar and truth in his voice. Don't hire him because he saved someone. Hire him because he's always been worth seeing." Rose absorbed that. "Okay," she said finally. "I can do that." She stood to leave, then turned back. "If you ever change your mind about the foundation, I'll know where to find you," Victor finished. She gave a faint smile, and for the first time since he met her, it reached her eyes. After she left, the room felt quieter. Not emptier, just clearer. Later that day, Victor stepped outside into the cold air. The hospital had discharged him with a list of instructions and a few raised eyebrows from staff who had caught wind of the night's events. But no one asked for selfies. No reporters were waiting. Just the wind and the long walk back to his apartment. He took the bus. No one noticed him. That was the point. Back at his building, the elevator was out again. He took the stairs, hand on the rail, each step a reminder of pain and purpose. When he reached his floor, the hallway lights flickered a familiar comfort. Mrs. Ellison, his neighbor, peeked through her cracked door. "Heard you were in the hospital," she said. "I'm fine," he replied. "Banged up a little. Didn't stop you from saving someone, did it?" He paused, then gave a modest nod. "You ever need anything," she said, "you just knock. You hear me? I hear you." He entered his apartment. It was small, neat, the kind of space where silence had learned to be kind. On the table sat a plain envelope, no logo, no return address. Inside, a handwritten note. "Victor, this isn't for what you did, it's for who you are. You reminded me who I wanted to be before power changed me. Use it how you see fit." R. Folded inside was a check, not extravagant, but generous. Enough to help pay off his brother's medical debt, enough to put a dent in the quiet burdens no one ever sees. Victor set the envelope down. He didn't smile, he didn't cry. He just stood there, still and breathing, as the sun reached through the blinds and brushed the scars on his knuckles. Outside, life moved on. Sirens, car horns, a kid laughing in the alley. No one knew his name. And that was okay, because justice didn't always come with applause. Sometimes, it came with silence and a second chance. 3 weeks passed. Winter deepened in Richmond, coating the city in a quiet frost. Victor Brown returned to his routine, or at least what was left of it. The Holloway estate no longer called him in for late-night shifts. After the incident, Rose had ordered a full security overhaul, and most of the staff had been quietly rotated out. Victor wasn't fired, just let go softly. A generous severance, a reference letter he hadn't asked for, and a quiet assurance that he would always be respected. But respect didn't pay rent, and Victor wasn't the kind to sit idle. He filled his days with repair jobs around the neighborhood, odd hours at a community shelter where his mechanical skills were useful. He kept to himself mostly, but word spread. And when someone's heat went out or a faucet burst, the quiet man in apartment 3B was the one they called. It was during one of those calls Mrs. Peña's garage light had gone dead again that he noticed the car. A black SUV with tinted windows, parked too neatly across from his building. It was the third time in a week. Not moving, not idling, just waiting, watching. Victor didn't panic, but he noticed. That night, after returning from the shelter, he checked his hallway. Quiet. He entered his apartment, set down his keys, and pulled the blinds halfway shut. Then he sat at the table and waited. At 11:17 p.m., someone knocked. Not the usual shuffle of Mrs. Ellison with her peach cobbler, not the kid from upstairs. 3 precise taps. Victor didn't speak. He opened the door slowly. A woman stood there, tall, military posture, trench coat. Not Rose, not a neighbor. "Mr. Brown? Who's asking?" "My name is Special Agent Monroe. I'm with Homeland Security." She flashed a badge. "I'd like to speak with you about the Holloway incident." He didn't flinch. "It's been handled. Your people already took Alex." "Yes," she said, "but not everything's been handled." She glanced down the hallway. "May I?" He let her in. She sat without waiting for permission. Victor remained standing. "You were in the room," Monroe began. "You saw what happened, but you also heard things. Plans, code names, technology." "I heard a man betray his sister," Victor said. "I saw fear in her eyes, and I stopped it." "You also mentioned during your statement that Alex referred to a Phase 2. Victor nodded slowly. "I figured it was a bluff." "It wasn't," Monroe said. She pulled out a folder. Inside were photographs, burnt hard drives, pieces of circuitry, coded documents. "Alex wasn't working alone. The man you fought, Rex, he's ex-private military. Off books, he was funded, and not just by Alex." Victor studied the images. "So this is bigger." "Much," she said. "Whatever they were building, it wasn't just software. It had real-world implications, infrastructure infiltration, possibly predictive surveillance systems. and you're one of the few people who saw the project from inside. Even if you didn't know what you were looking at, you want me to testify?" he asked. "Eventually," Monroe said, "but right now, I need something else, a pattern. Someone close to Alex is still moving assets, cleaning up traces. You have instincts, Mr. Brown. You see what others ignore. I need eyes on the ground." "You want to recruit a janitor?" he said, half amused. "No," Monroe replied. "I want to recruit a man who didn't flinch when everything collapsed." Victor looked at her, long and hard. "What happens if I say no?" "Then someone else will get hurt," she said. "And you'll watch it on the news, wondering if you could have stopped it." He sighed, rubbed his temple. The weight never left. It just changed shape. "What do you need me to do?" Monroe handed him a burner phone. "You'll get a message when we need a pair of eyes. You won't carry a badge. You won't wear a wire. You'll just be who you are, a man no one notices, in rooms most people ignore, and if you find something, you call me." The next week was quiet, deceptively so. Victor resumed his routine, but now with added layers. He watched people more carefully. Noticed a man in a city maintenance uniform loitering too long outside a fiber optics hub. Saw an empty van parked outside the local utility office 3 nights in a row. He wrote everything down. He waited. Then one day, the phone buzzed. A single address. No explanation. He went. It was an old storage facility near the docks. Claimed to be empty, yet half the cameras were live. He circled the building. At the rear, a service entrance cracked open. Inside, nothing but crates and shadows until he heard voices. He didn't go in. He recorded the conversation. 2 men, talking about hardware transfers, backdoor software patches, and a new alpha protocol that would deploy by March. He left before they saw him. Later that night, he sent the clip to Monroe. No response. Not immediately. But 2 days later, he turned on the news and saw a fire at the storage facility. Official reports called it an electrical fault. He knew better. Back at home, he poured himself a drink tea, nothing stronger. He stared out the window and wondered just how deep the rabbit hole went. The following morning, another envelope appeared at his door. This one typed. Inside, a note. "Eyes open, Mr. Brown." Some fires burned quietly. Underneath, a single name, Chambers. Victor folded the paper. Whatever came next, he wasn't just cleaning up messes anymore. He was walking straight into them. And this time, on purpose. Victor stood in the center of his modest apartment, the name Chambers echoing in his mind like the slow toll of a warning bell. No first name, no address, no details, just a name. It was a breadcrumb in a trail that seemed to weave between shadows and bureaucracy, but it was also a signal. Monroe hadn't said a word since the last drop. This wasn't an official mission. This was something else. Chambers. The name meant nothing to him at first. He scoured local government listings, public employment records, and even whispered it to a few people he trusted at the shelter. Nothing, until one night, while changing a busted boiler at the East Community Center, a man named Teddy, former parole officer, now janitor, offered a clue. "Chambers?" Teddy had said, wiping grease from his hands. "I knew a guy with that last name. Used to head up a private intelligence firm. Retired or disappeared, depending on who you ask." "Where?" Victor pressed. Teddy shrugged. "Somewhere upstate. Had a place in Appomattox. Off the grid. You go looking. You better be ready for what you find." Victor was. He packed light old boots, backup phone, a flashlight, and a copy of the note with the single word, Chambers. Appomattox was a 4-hour drive from Richmond, but Victor took the bus, then walked the final 2 miles through woods and gravel. As the sun dipped behind leafless trees, he found a cabin tucked between pines, surrounded by silence. No car, no smoke, but a faint flicker of light behind shuttered windows. He approached slow, boots crunching on the frost-laced leaves. He didn't knock. He circled the perimeter first, eyes scanning for sensors, tripwires, cameras. Found none, which meant whoever was inside either wasn't worried or wanted him to come closer. At the back, the door was slightly ajar, not broken, just waiting. Victor pushed it open. Inside, the air was warm. A single lamp lit a table covered in papers, maps, and circuit boards. Sitting beside it, an old man, maybe late 60s, lean, scar across his temple. He didn't look surprised. "You're late," the man said. Victor froze. "Chambers?" The man nodded. "You must be the janitor. Victor Brown. I know who you are." The man gestured to the other chair. "Sit. Before your paranoia gives me a headache." Victor didn't sit. "You were expecting me?" "No," Chambers said. "But I knew someone would come. Monroe still playing the Patriot game?" "You worked with her?" "Briefly. Before I realized she worked with people who think ethics are optional." Chambers leaned back, folding his arms. "Why are you here?" Victor dropped the note on the table. "This showed up after I intercepted a hardware smuggling conversation at the docks. 2 men. Alpha Protocol. You were next." Chambers stared at the note. Then he picked it up, burned it with a lighter, and dropped the ashes into a tin can. "Alpha Protocol isn't just software," he said. "It's a framework, a way to tag, track, and manipulate data in real time. Military-level surveillance. Behavioral prediction. Think you're browsing cat videos? The algorithm learns your family structure, political leanings, fears. Then it feeds that data back to manipulate you and a million others without anyone ever knowing." "And Alex Holloway was building it?" Victor asked. "Not building. Monetizing," Chambers replied. "He stole the prototype from a think tank run by people like me. People who thought it was just theory. But he found funding. Ruthless, desperate funding. The kind that doesn't mind tying CEOs to chairs if it means controlling minds." Victor felt his chest tighten. "So, what now?" Chambers stood slowly, walking to a rusted filing cabinet in the corner. He pulled out a folder marked with red tape, thick with documents. "This is every contact Alex had in the last 6 months before he went rogue. Offshore accounts, burner emails, shipment logs. All scrubbed from official databases. You didn't find me, Victor. You were sent to keep me alive." "Why me?" Victor asked. "Because," Chambers said, turning to him, "you're invisible. And in this war, the visible get erased." Victor finally sat. His knees ached from the walk, his head from the weight of it all. "What am I supposed to do with this?" "Study it. Find the next link. There's someone out there still moving pieces. Someone who didn't show up on the cameras that night. If you want to stop this, it starts with understanding how deep it goes. And if I get caught?" Chambers didn't smile. "Then the story ends with you buried in a press release about a tragic misunderstanding." Victor nodded. He took the folder, slid it into his backpack, and stood. "You're not coming with me?" "No," Chambers said. "I've lived my war. Now I light fires where I can and hope someone else carries the torch." Outside, night had fallen completely. The woods whispered. Victor walked the long path back under a sky full of stars, the weight of truth pressing against his spine. By the time he reached the main road, he had made a choice. He wouldn't wait for Monroe's next call. He would follow the trail himself, because some systems don't crash, they rot from the inside. And sometimes, the only way to clean it is to go deeper. Victor unfolded the folder gently in his cramped apartment, the documents whispering secrets under the lamplight. The envelope from Chambers lay among them, ghostly letters spelling out a network built on algorithmic manipulation and shadow servers. Across the room, the burner phone sat silent, but Victor didn't need it yet. He had a map, names, dates, shipment records. He began to trace patterns, shipment logs, matching utility trucks, offshore accounts funneling money through shell companies, coded emails referencing Phase 2. One name recurred, Chambers Industrial Systems, supposedly defunct but clearly still moving parts. Victor leaned back and closed his eyes. He had stumbled into something big, so big it could reach into public infrastructure, health data, even traffic lights. The implications made his chest tighten. He didn't sleep that night. He cross-referenced a driver's license in the folder, a South Carolina man with 4 utility van registrations. Something clicked. Next morning, he boarded a bus and headed to the utility yard on the edge of Richmond. He staked it out, watched men in plain clothes and safety vests load crates into low-roofed vans. One van drove off. Victor struck up a conversation with a young lineman spilling lunch from a paper sack. The lineman mentioned a job site van that never showed up on records. Victor pretended to laugh. Later, he slipped into the van's rear and found a tag with an address, a business park just outside town. He snapped a photo and exited before the driver locked the door. Back home, he texted Monroe with coordinates. She replied within hours. Federal agents would move tonight. Victor felt the familiar ache relief mixed with dread. The van raid led to the discovery of hardware labeled Alpha 3 prototype and circuit boards with stenciled code. Agents seized laptops and began interviews. Monroe thanked him quietly. "You did good," she texted. That night, Victor returned to the storage unit off the docks, the one he'd scoped before, only now police tape fluttered across bay doors. Inside, rows of burnt crates were being examined by federal investigators. He slipped to the back and found electronics scorched beyond recognition, but still recognizable to him, parts of a neural interface he'd seen in the folders. He spoke to one tech specialist, who nodded grimly. "They tried to erase evidence with fire. Doesn't always work." Victor didn't say anything. He'd seen fire before. It changed things, but what burned didn't always vanish. He left the site before being noticed, carrying a single board fragment with delicate silicon wiring. At home, he placed it beside his wife's old wedding ring on his table. They were silent companions, memory and proof. Days passed. Rose sent a handwritten letter. "You are more visible than you know." Victor didn't respond. He was mapping the network. He traced Chambers' industrial contacts to fake non-profit shells on the West Coast, code names, phone numbers, frequency patterns. He waited until his burner phone buzzed, a message with the word Chambers and an address in Philadelphia. He packed again. This time he flew, carrying coffee and courage. In Philadelphia, he slipped into the office building, nondescript, low traffic, beige walls. A cleaning service sign hung by the elevator. Victor pressed the button up to the 12th floor and stepped out into a corporate labyrinth. He posed as a temp janitor repairing a smoke alarm. A security guard eyed him suspiciously but let him through after he presented a contractor badge he'd taken. Victor was good at remembering details. On the 12th floor, he heard laughter and corporate jargon about full-stack deployment and market capture. He climbed a janitor's access stairwell to the 13th floor, unused but keyed. The door rattled open. Inside was a data room, blinking servers, humming processors. He plugged a USB stick into an open port and downloaded a file named Chambers, clients.csv. A sudden thud in the corridor. Footsteps. He unhooked the stick and exited quickly. A woman in a power suit parted the hallway. He said softly, "Just checking alarms." She frowned but let him walk by. He took the stairs down, heart pounding, and exited the building quietly. Later, Monroe called. "We got it. You got something big." He heard agents coordinate raids across California and Arizona, simultaneous arrests. They'd caught offshore financiers moving funds marked for Project Alpha. The network was unraveling. Victor listened. Relief washed over him briefly, then sharpened into purpose. The web of corruption extended farther than Alex or Rex. It touched people everywhere. Standing alone in a hotel lobby in Philadelphia, Victor swallowed. He was a man who once walked corridors with a mop. Now he had helped bring down a system designed to control millions. He owed it to his past, his wife, every invisible person he'd been. Monroe's voice crackled softly in his ear. "Go home when you're ready." Victor nodded to himself. "Not yet," he whispered, because somewhere further down the line, ashes still smoldered, and he had more cleaning to do. Victor stepped off the bus at dusk, the chill of February biting through his coat as he crossed the street toward the entrance of the old fire station in Richmond's East End. He paused at the curb, brushing imaginary soot from his shirt memory stinging sharp like frozen glass. He hadn't visited this place in years. After the accident, discrimination had driven him away. His heroism erased from the official report because he was black and convenient to ignore. But tonight, the station loomed before him like a ghost asking for reckoning. Inside, half the bay doors had been boarded up, but equipment still hung: hoses, turnout gear, extinguishers, even the names of old recruits stenciled in peeling paint. Victor's steps echoed as he climbed the metal staircase to the upper floor. The drill room smelled faintly of diesel and memories. He reached a narrow corridor and paused at a faded plaque. Engine Company, 12, in service since 1898. Below it, a photograph taped to the wall showed him, smoke-blackened and bruised, carrying 2 children from a burning building. The caption, "Rescue at 103 Maple Avenue, June 2007. His hands tensed. He pushed open a door to the old dormitory. The ceiling tiles sagged, Dust motes floated in the yellow glow of a bare bulb. In the corner, a wooden crate held relics, an oxygen tank, a well-worn axe, old gloves. Victor lifted the gloves and slipped them on, feeling their comfort. He stared at his reflection in a cracked mirror, a 3-5-year-old black man in a janitor's jacket, eyes shadowed but steady, the past and present folded together. A ringtone stopped his reverie. On a small desk lay his burner phone, Monroe's call. "Victor?" Her voice was quiet. "We got chatter. Someone's moving assets again Midwest. Chambers clients trying to rebuild. We need you back on this." He swallowed. "I'm already halfway there." She paused. "Good. Be careful. Don't trust anyone local." He hung up. Victor stood, dove into the crate, and pulled out the fire axe witness to rage and rescue. He strapped it to his back and left the building, exiting through the back alley where faded graffiti read, "Legacy belongs to the brave." He didn't look back. He boarded a train northwest toward Chicago, notebooks and drive files tucked in his pack. During the ride, he reviewed the folders from Chambers' names, dates, coded abbreviations like Alpha 3 Beta. One name stood out, Nina Walters, a developer rumored to have escaped raids in California. He tapped the data. She had shipments scheduled through Milwaukee. Victor made a plan. When he reached Chicago, snowfall began. He rented a car, drove to a nondescript office park where Nina supposedly worked as security consultant. The building's lobby smelled like stale coffee. Security cameras captured his face. Inside, he blended in, pushing a janitor's cart he'd borrowed from the front desk. His clothes, same muted uniform, but underneath, a conference badge temporary maintenance clerk hung from his neck. No one said a word. People like him shuffled through corridors while executives passed. Victor murmured affirmations about justice and memory, nicknames echoing from old stations, Smoke Eater, Guardian. He passed a modern water cooler, paused. A reflection flashed in steel, a man who cleaned floors, but whose mind cleaned shadows. At 3 p.m., he found Nina's office suite. The door was open. Inside, he saw servers humming, wires snaking, the kind of hardware that once powered predictive data sets. He slid in and out, copying files named Walters, Alpha, Clients, 2025, CSV. A janitor's whistle sounded in the hallway, his cue. He backed out, dropped a trash bin in the corridor to distract any watchers, and slipped away. That night, he sent the file to Monroe. Agents raided Nina's residence in Wisconsin the next morning, seizing equipment and charging her with data manipulation and unauthorized transfer. The network trembled again. He followed updates on a burner app, search warrants, indictments, abrupt suspensions of high-level security consultants across states. But Victor's mind drifted back to that fire station, to the children's terrified faces, to the captain's praise that had vanished in paperwork. A longing surfaced not for recognition, but for truth. A line he'd once whispered to himself, "We saved them. That's enough." Yet Chicago demanded more. That evening, Monroe sent logistics. San Francisco next. Nina Walters had emails hinting at a safe house on the West Coast. Victor closed his eyes and pictured the silent streets outside his Richmond apartment. He thought of Rose's letter, of Chambers' warnings. The network wasn't crumbling, it was fracturing, scattering like ashes in wind. He stood at Union Station platform, fog swirling around his boots. A freight train rumbled past, metal and purpose. The sky periwinkle with early evening. Victor breathed in cold air. He was tired, bruised, carrying everything from past trauma to future unfinished business. But he was steady. A woman approached the conductor. "Ticket?" she asked, suspicion softening into recognition. Someone had sent a memo. "Protect this man." She checked his badge, then nodded. Her eyes flicked to the axe strapped to his back. She didn't ask, didn't need to. Victor boarded the train to San Francisco, the axe quiet behind him. As the doors slid shut, he leaned his head back. He carried the faith of children he'd saved long ago, the silent gratitude of a woman he'd saved not long since, the haunted conscience of someone who'd seen systems meant to protect become weapons to control. The whistle blew. He exhaled. Ahead lay a city of hills, fog, and opportunity. Ahead lay files, safe houses, ghosts of data clients who never expected the janitor to become an investigator. He'd been invisible all his life. Now, he'd make sure they remembered. And when the end came, it wouldn't be about applause. It would be about doing the right thing. No rank, no reward, just vision. And more than enough courage. Victor disembarked at San Francisco's station under a sky so misted it seemed like soft smoke. The chill in the air seemed different here, salt-laced and sharp. He hadn't slept. He reviewed the file, conspirators operating out of a minimal storefront in the Mission District. Code names floated in the spreadsheet. Spectre, Echo, Omega, one address flagged in yellow. He took a lift, his backpack slung across his shoulder, axe concealed beneath the cartwheels stamped city maintenance. The ride crawled through hills, past murals proclaiming resistance is survival. The driver didn't ask questions, just nodded when Victor showed the conference badge. At the corner, he paid and walked the rest, the building drab, industrial. A rolling steel door half ajar invited inspection. Steam escaped from vents. Inside, construction-style lighting revealed an array of servers humming in rows. The biggest AI hub he'd seen outside the Holloway estate. Victor's heart tightened. This was it, the clean lab for Project Alpha, moving westward. He stepped deeper, careful not to disturb floor sensors. Patching into an unguarded terminal, he downloaded logs, shipment receipts, active IP addresses, and a folder labeled Spectre Deployment Timeline. Time tags suggested a live rollout within 2 weeks across municipal utility grids. As he transferred the data, footsteps clicked behind him. A woman's shadow appeared, a silhouette in a sleek blazer with shadowy pixels in her ID badge. Dana Spectre, Connecticut, O Private Utility Consulting. Victor froze. She asked calmly, "May I help you?" He backed away slowly. She eyed him, no shock, only curiosity. "Janitor? Contractor," Victor said. She frowned, gestured. "You don't belong here." Victor met her gaze. "Does it matter? The files don't know who clicked download." She pressed a button and the lights flicked brighter. Security drones hummed overhead. It was too obvious. She gripped a comm. Victor weighed options. Escape meant losing the board data. Stay meant capture. He glanced at the door, took a breath. He lunged shoulder into her, grabbed a nearby trolley, threw it into servers, sparks and alarms. Spectre cursed loudly, pressed headset, lockdown. Victor sprinted, dodging drones, using shadows as cover, shards of broken glass at every turn. He stumbled into a side vent shaft, ducts under steel bars, bleeding from a wrist cut. Used phone flashlight, crawled through cables and dust, 8 coughs of smoke and fear. He emerged in a parking loading dock, sank against a wall, breath ragged. He'd lost the data stick in the melee. Damn. But he swore, not the mission. He pulled his phone, opened burner app, typed, "Lost stick, Spectre attacked, emergency." A code lit, extraction at 0300 hours from roof pad. He wiped blood from his face, limped toward the elevator lobby, pressing the call button with shaking fingers. On elevator, heart thundering, he pressed rooftop access rare code accepted. Doors slid open to wind and city lights. A drone waited, lowered a rope ladder. He climbed up, blood staining his gloves. Below, sirens grew distant but approaching. He reached the roof's edge as another drone Monroe's signal spooled out. He climbed, made contact, and disappeared into the night sky. Down below, Spectre's panic broadcasted across agent channels. Data servers destroyed, HD sticks missing, Janitor infiltrated. Someone let him go. Monroe's voice crackled clear in Victor's earpiece. "Good work. We have partial logs from cameras' planned deployment structure. We'll mop up the rest." Victor exhaled, his ribs ache renewed, his blood for memory. He looked down at city lights trailing behind him. Back in a safe house, he reviewed the shard data retrieved remotely via CloudSync, timestamps, kill switches, IPs, enough to identify contractors and shell corporations, enough to shut Phase 2 down statewide, and enough to trace Spectre and partners directly to the California Utility Board corruption scandal. Next week, raids hit the building he just fled, other labs, home addresses. Agents arrested Dana Spectre and 5 others. Local press covered skilled infiltrator-aided federal operation. No mention of Janitor. No speech. The silent victory felt right. Victor boarded a plane back east. As he stared out the window over the Pacific, he thought of that fire station in Richmond, of children he saved and was erased, of Rose calling his name. He carried in a pocket the recovery drive Spectre had tried to delete. On it, all deployment plans for Alpha Phase 2, reports of data clients from state utilities across 10 cities, and encrypt logs tying Alex Holloway's shell corporations to the pipelines. Despite the notifications, he didn't celebrate. He returned to Richmond at 6 a.m., stepped off the plane, felt the cold, familiar air. His phone buzzed with Monroe's message, "Return to Richmond home at your discretion." He tucked the recovery drive into his jacket and made his way through customs of light and shadow. At his apartment, Mrs. Ellison sat by her door. She gave a soft, knowing nod. No questions. A neighborly salute. Victor didn't unpack. He set the drive on the kitchen table beside the chipped coffee mug Rose had sent with the note. He leaned against the counter, eyes closing. He'd cleaned corridors of smoke, servers of corruption, data of deception. Justice had crystallized in quiet files and ruined labs. No reward package, no press conference. Just proof that sometimes being invisible wasn't a curse, it was camouflage. He looked at his phone again, a new message. Phase 2 neutralized. All grateful. He tapped reply. Keep me posted. Outside, Richmond quieted under dawn light. Inside, a man breathed easier, and the world he helped save didn't know his name. Yet, Victor returned to Richmond on a cool morning, winter sunlight filtering across the runway, carrying the recovery drive tucked safely in his jacket. He walked through the quiet streets toward his modest apartment, every footstep grounding him back into the city he both healed and haunted. He passed the boarded fire station, still echoing the ghosts of engine company. 12's passed, and paused for a moment to touch the peeling plaque. He whispered to the empty air, "I did right tonight." Inside, Mrs. Ellison greeted him with a nod, no fuss, just warmth. Victor nodded back, heavy with fatigue, and crossed to the kitchen table. He set down the chipped coffee mug Rose had mailed and placed the recovery drive beside it. He pulled out his phone. Monroe had texted again. Assets seized. Spectre indicted. Federal cleanup continues. Victor took a deep breath and picked up the drive. He reopened the files. Logs, shipment dates, email headers, code names. Enough to prosecute not just Alex Holloway and Dana Spectre, but at least 20 names across 5 states involved in Phase 2. Enough to rewrite how predictive surveillance could be abused. Justice spread quietly, through sealed indictments and late-night subpoenas, all built on evidence he unearthed. He backed away from the table and went to his small bookshelf. He removed a framed black and white photo of himself carrying 2 children out of a burning house. The caption read, 103 Maple Avenue Inu Rescue, June 2007. It was worn but real. He placed it on the kitchen table next to the drive and mug. He pressed a fingertip against the glass and thought about visibility, not fame, but truth. Later that afternoon, a soft knock came at the door. Victor opened it to find Rose standing there, wearing a wool coat and carrying a thermos of soup. She smiled for the first time without armor, without distance. "I made too much," she said. "I thought you might want dinner." He offered her the chair at the small table. She sat, and they ate in comfortable silence, broken only by the distant hum of traffic. She wiped her spoon and said, "My attorneys cleared my name publicly. The company stock dropped, but that's okay. I'll rebuild differently." He nodded. She continued, "I'm launching a scholarship community, leadership and crisis response for veterans and service workers who've been pushed aside." Victor looked at her, surprised. "You didn't need to tell me." "I know," she replied, "but I wanted to. You reminded me that it's not enough to see one man. You have to look for the rest." Victor sipped soup, slower now. He told her what the drive contained: phase, 2 maps, network nodes, shell corporations. Her eyes widened. "This is bigger than we thought," she said. "Thank you." He simply said, "People like me don't disappear quietly anymore." Later that week, Victor visited the old fire station again. He knocked on the side door, and to his surprise, the community center director opened it. They'd turned part of the building into a youth mentorship hub. "We want to make room for your story," the director said. "We'd like to hang that photo on the wall, permanently." Victor hesitated. "Only with your name next to it," she added. "Victor Brown, real hero." He nodded, voice thick with memory. Walking away from the station, Victor reflected on how invisible corridors from firehouses to cleaning carts to secret data labs had shaped him. How every ignored second, every erased rescue had led him here. How the quiet loyalty to truth had cracked walls built on data and privilege. That evening, he sat in his apartment and built a small display. The photo, the recovery drive in its case, and the framed note Rose wrote. "This is for who you are." He placed them carefully on a floating shelf beside the window. In the night light they formed his altar, reminders of memory, humility, and justice done in silence. Then he stood, zipped his jacket, and placed the axe in its corner next to the door. He didn't touch it again. Tonight was over. He went to bed early, exhaustion heavy in his bones. Dreamless sleep found him. By dawn, Richmond woke slowly. Victor stirred, dressed, and left his apartment. The world outside stirred 2 city buses, early risers, a newspaper stand at the corner. A headline read, "Federal Sweep Dismantles Surveillance Conspiracy." No mention of Janitor, no byline credit, just the facts. Justice moved on without trumpet fanfare. Victor walked past the stand, glanced at the headline, then continued on. His reflection passed in a shop window. A man in a janitor's coat, walking to work. Just a man, but not invisible anymore. He unlocked the door to Holloway Innovations' volunteer janitorial shift he'd offered to help with the cleanup after the incident. Rose greeted him with a nod and a tray of warm coffee. She called him Victor, properly, without the old labels. He smiled. Then he headed upstairs to clean corridors of memory, as quietly as ever, only now with dignity, justice, and the knowledge that he'd helped clean something bigger than marble floors. He'd helped restore truth. And sometimes, that's enough. Victor stepped over the threshold of his modest apartment at dawn and placed a steaming mug of coffee atop the kitchen table. The framed photograph of his rescue at Maple Avenue, the recovery drive labeled Phase 2 evidence, and Rose's written note, "This is for who you are," caught the first pale light. He'd slept deeply, finally. His muscles still ached, but his spirit felt steady. His phone buzzed. Monroe's text, "Public release, scheduled at 10 a.m. You're cleared." That meant everything he'd exposed would now be official, sealed in court documents, unsealed to the world. Transparent justice. He exhaled slowly, then checked the window. Snow had started again, light flakes descending on Richmond like symbols of quiet cleansing. He dressed warmly and exited into the crisp winter morning, burying the editorials in his pocket and a thermos in hand. The community center door swung open as Mrs. Ellison greeted him with a gentle smile. "Heard the news," she said softly. He nodded, sipping his coffee. "I just walk," he replied. That same morning, Rose called. She sounded fragile for the first time since the incident. "Victor, could you come by the office? I want to talk." His answer was simple, "I'll be there." He arrived late morning at Holloway Innovations. The building's elegant facade looked different today, a banner reading, "Transparency, Truth, Trust," hung in the lobby. Rose approached him in the atrium, hair down, wearing a scarf and no makeup. She looked less CEO, more human. "The board has decided," she said quietly, "to include a permanent photo on our wall in the atrium. Your portrait, with a plaque that reads Victor Brown, Courage in Service." Victor's throat tightened. He said nothing at first. "You fought because you believed it was right. I hope you accept this not as praise, but as penance for being wrong before." He nodded slowly. Rose then handed him a small envelope. Inside was a certificate, appointment as Community Security Advisor, unpaid but respected, for advisory meetings on ethical tech policy and outreach. "Your voice matters now," she told him, "but only if you share it." Victor didn't respond immediately. He felt perhaps for the first time that he belonged. The office buzz hummed around them, people whispered about his courage. He looked into Rose's eyes and saw regret, gratitude, and change. He accepted the plaque, and with it took another step into visibility. Later, he stepped outside into the late morning sun and walked to the old fire station, now fully restored as the Richmond Community Safety and Mentorship Center. Children played in the courtyard. Coaches practiced drills. A staff member greeted him and led him to the wall where his photo now hung smiling, in turnout gear, lifting a child from the fire. Beneath it, his name. He stood quietly, letting the moment sink in. Mothers paused nearby to show their children the hero on the wall. His act of bravery turned into everyday inspiration. He felt warmth, not the old ache of erased memory. At noon, he visited the scholarship office Rose had launched. Community leadership and emergency response scholarships accepted applications now. He saw applicants, veterans, older workers, people with scars and stories like his. He spoke to two older men who thanked him as if he were their son. He simply said, "Keep going." Walking home, he felt the city breathe around him, a web of lives touched by the shift he helped ignite. As the sun lowered, he reached his apartment again. The room was brighter now, even though the snow thickened outside. He placed the plaque and certificate beside his personal shrine. Then he took the axe, its handle worn, blade clean, and placed it in its stand. Memories of struggle and rescue lived in that tool. Now they were stored, honored, retired. Victor sat back and looked out the window. The headline on the laptop screen read, "Predictive Surveillance Network Shut Down. Congressional Hearings Begin." It wouldn't mention his name. That was fine. He knew the truth was built of many silent bricks. Moments ago, he had called Monroe to thank her. She said, "We couldn't have done this without you." And he answered, "We did it together." He closed the laptop, stood and walked to the window overlooking Richmond's winter streets. Snow drifted. People moved. Buses arrived. He was no longer invisible. He was a voice for others, a signal amid systems trying to erase humanity. And tomorrow, as every morning since the night that changed everything, he would wake, sip coffee, and keep walking. Not for glory, but because doing the right thing is always worth the cost. Victor woke before dawn, the room dim except for the glow of streetlights reflecting off snow in Richmond. The plaque naming him Victor Brown, Courage in Service, sat on the wall beside the fire station photo and the Phase 2 recovery drive. His phone buzzed with photos from Rose, the first scholarship recipient, an African-American Navy veteran with a smile that reminded Victor of something he used to feel long ago. He brewed tea and dressed slowly before stepping out into another chilly morning. He walked to the community center built from the old engine company 12 station. Kids and mentors mingled. Hope buzzed in the air like the hum of restored fire engine alarms. A staffer introduced him to the event. Today's ceremony was for awarding the first Rose Victor Scholarship. Rose handed Victor the microphone first. He cleared his throat, the room growing still. "I didn't save anyone because I believed I was special. I did it because someone needed help, and I saw no reason not to act. This scholarship isn't about me. It's about making sure the next person with scars and shadows gets seen before they disappear." Applause filled the hall. The veteran recipient gripped Victor's hand. "You changed things," he whispered. Later, Victor walked through the mentorship rooms. A boy asked about fire safety. Victor knelt, demonstrated how to hold a hose, his hands steady. Scars from old burns he didn't mention. The boy watched intensely. Victor left the demo and joined Rose at a small reception. She said softly, "It's safer now with your support. Policy is changing. State legislators are drafting bills about ethical AI and surveillance limits. Your input is requested." Victor considered it. He wanted to serve, quietly. She nodded, understanding. She poured tea into a small cup and passed it to Victor. "Thank you," she said. He paused, then replied, "Don't thank me for seeing others. Just keep seeing them." That afternoon he returned home and found another letter, not news, no badge, just a card. Inside, Rose's handwriting, later scribbled at the bottom. "Our first scholar says he wants to call you Mr. Victor. He told me you're a man worth greeting properly." He smiled. He placed the card on the shelf. It joined the others, silent marks of memory honored. Evening came. He walked the old station again, now lit with soft golden lamps. Children were gone. Echoes of laughter lingered. He didn't linger long. In his apartment, he reviewed secure messages from Monroe, the network's shutdown reports, indictments, policy proposals. He drafted a letter for legislators recommending minimum oversight protocols, referencing Phase 2 but protecting identities. He paused, hovering over the last sentence. "Respect the janitor's voice." He nodded and sent it anonymously. Because heroism wasn't a spotlight, it was holding truth and using it well. Victor shut his laptop and stood. He sipped tea by the window. Snow fell in quiet drifts. He thought of fires, rescue, betrayal, redemption, of Rose finally seeing him, of children learning fire safety, of veterans like that, young Navy man with fresh scars and hope in his eyes. Tomorrow, he would return to the building Holloway Innovations for another volunteer shift cleaning corridors. Perhaps afterward, he'd speak at a local library about surveillance ethics. No fanfare, no cameras. Just a man with history, voice, and choice. A man once invisible now bridging systems with integrity. He placed the fire axe back in its corner, the blade shining faintly. It had done its work. Now it was symbol. Victor looked into the reflection of window glass and saw a figure shaped by fires, loss, and resolve. He thought, justice doesn't need applause. It needs courage and quiet action. He climbed into bed early. Sleep came dreamless. When dawn arrived, he would wake again, mug in hand, walking the same streets, saying the same prayers inside. Do right. Be visible for those who aren't. Help before it's too late. And in that daily vow lay his greatest truth, that invisibility can be changed not by power, but by steadfastness, and that a single act in the dark can shine longer than the brightest headlines. Victor woke to the pale morning light filtering through frosted window panes and the soft hum of Richmond stirring to life. On the kitchen table lay acknowledgments. Monroe's encrypted message confirming Phase 2 prosecution underway. Rose's organized press kit announcing the new scholarship foundation and a handwritten invitation to testify before a state committee on surveillance ethics. He leaned back, wrapped in a blanket, absorbing the quiet weight of it all. Today was the final chapter of something much larger, the reckoning, not for Victor, but for systems built on silence and invisibility. He dressed slowly and walked through the city streets, stopping first at the Community Safety and Mentorship Center. The children were rehearsing a fire drill, guided by volunteer instructors. As he entered, their attention snapped to him. One little girl, brave-eyed, asked, "Are you firefighter Victor?" He knelt down and smiled gently. "Just someone who learned how to help." A teacher later approached and said, "Your photo inspired so many kids. You've changed lives." Victor nodded quietly and slipped away, because today wasn't about him. He walked across the river to the Virginia State Capitol. The corridors were grand, lined with marble and quiet urgency. His name wasn't on a marquee, but a clerk recognized him and nodded toward the hearing room. He stepped inside. Legislators, activists, technologists, veterans filled the seats. At the front stood a long panel of lawmakers awaiting testimony. Rose sat beside him, plain-clothed, supportive. His palms were steady. He felt his life had led here. When his name was called, he rose. Cameras gleamed, but remained off. The hearing was public but controlled. He walked to the podium, cleared his throat, and began, "I'm Victor Brown. I cleaned corridors. Not because I was destined to be seen, but because someone had to walk through darkness." He spoke of systems built without oversight, algorithms wielded by invisible hands. He talked about Alex Holloway, Dana Spector, the network bruising public trust. He didn't preach. He shared facts drawn from hard-won files and nights spent watching van logs and code names. He quoted Chambers, "Invisible men often see the clearest." His voice was calm, but eyes burned with conviction. Testimony spanned 90 minutes. When he finished, there was silence, then applause, soft but sincere. Legislators asked questions. Should whistleblower anonymity be protected? How do we prevent proprietary AI from hijacking civic systems? Victor answered plainly, transparency, third-party audits, community oversight, not just internal boards. When he stepped down, Rose hugged him. "You just helped shape policy," she whispered. He didn't smile. He exhaled, feeling grounded. Later that afternoon, he returned to the Holloway Innovations lobby. The plaque with his name shone in midday light. Victor Brown, Courage in Service. Rose joined him and said, "That wall will house your testimony transcript, publicly accessible, no secrets, no erasure." He nodded. She ended, "You gave people a choice, to see someone before it's too late." He replied softly, "And you started seeing them after it wasn't too late." "Oh?" He left the building and walked to the park bench overlooking the James River. The water shimmered under winter's low sun. He sat, pulled his coat tighter, and watched ducks glide on glass. A homeless veteran wandered over, recognized his old ID tag, and asked, "You're the man from the news?" Victor nodded. The veteran offered a tin can as tribute. Victor shook his head. He reached into his pocket and gave the man a card. "Rose, Victor Scholarship Info. Apply," he said. "You belong." The veteran's eyes filled with gratitude. Dusk settled, and Victor headed home as the city lights drifted on. At his front door, Mrs. Ellison handed him mail an envelope, embossed with the community center logo. Inside, a photo taken of the scholarship winner embracing his plaque beneath the image. In Rose's handwriting, "Victor saw me before the world did." He whispered, "Not the world, just someone." Then he placed it with the others, the recovery drive, the framed note, Rose's letter. He went inside and stood in front of his wall shrine. Photo, plaque, scholarship card. He took the frame from the wall, a photograph of him and 2 rescued children from 2007. He looked at his name engraved beneath, steady and uncolored by speeches. Then he turned and rested his palm on the axe handle beside the door. He didn't look for comfort in symbols. He found it in purpose fulfilled. That night, he lit a single candle on his table, letting its glow warm the cold corners of the apartment. He sat beside it and reflected on the journey. A man once invisible, erased not just by fire but by prejudice. A woman who learned the cost of overlooking humanity. A network built to manipulate thousands undone by one man's will to act. He thought of future hearings, future volunteers, future scholars whose fire Victor had helped reanimate. He closed his eyes and prayed for those still unseen, for systems yet to fall, for courage in unlikely hands. Morning would come. The snow outside would keep falling. He would rise, brew coffee, and walk again. Because being visible wasn't about recognition, it was about refusing to disappear. In those routine steps, hidden beneath everyday life, lay his legacy. Justice done not for applause, but for those who never asked to be seen. And for Victor Brown, that was more than enough. The story of Victor Brown reminds us that true heroism lies not in recognition, but in the quiet, steadfast acts of courage that often go unnoticed. Justice isn't always loud. It is built by those who choose to do right when no one is watching. Victor's journey teaches us the power of integrity, the importance of seeing value in every person regardless of their position, and the profound change that can come when even one invisible voice dares to speak up. In a world that too often overlooks the marginalized, this story is a tribute to those who choose justice over convenience, truth over silence,